this lesson, we're going to run through some of the most useful keyboard shortcuts. And we've used quite a few keyboard shortcuts so far in this course, and for me, they are the number one thing to learn if you want to improve your efficiency when working in Excel. Now, there are hundreds and hundreds of keyboard shortcuts, and you are definitely not going to remember all of them. And what I would say is that most people have 10 to 15 that they use all the time. So let me show you some of the most popular ones. Now, if you take a look at my workbook, I currently don't have anything open. And as we've already seen, if we want to create a new blank workbook, we can use the keyboard shortcut of Control-N. If I now wanted to save this workbook, and bear in mind we haven't really discussed saving in any great detail at the moment, we could press Control-S, and that's going to prompt us to save this file into a location. Now, I'm not going to do that at the moment because we have an entire lesson on saving. Let's just click Cancel. So now let's type something into a cell. So I'm just going to pick a random cell somewhere in the middle here. H7 is the cell reference, and I'm going to type in the number 1000. Now, what about if I want to format this number? Well, there's a couple of things I can do here. The Control-B keyboard shortcut is going to apply bold formatting. If I then choose Control-I, it's going to apply italic formatting. Now notice, as I've used these keyboard shortcuts, if we take a look up on the Home ribbon in the font group, notice that now both bold and italic are showing as being toggled on. What I could also do is Control-U. That's going to toggle on the underline. And if I want to undo the underline, the italic, and the bold, a very important keyboard shortcut which you're going to use all the time is Control-Z. That's going to undo your last action. So I can go all the way back to how the number was originally simply by doing Control-Z 3 times. What about if I want to move this number to a different cell in the worksheet? Well, for that, I can use Cut. And we have a keyboard shortcut for Cut of Control-X. Notice as soon as I press Control-X, I now have what we refer to as marching ants or sometimes dancing ants around the outside of the cell. And that really just lets me know that I've cut this information. Now, if I was to click the diagonal arrow next to clipboard, if you remember previously we looked in here, this is where any cut items will be gathered. So you can see at the top here, because I haven't pasted this yet, I've simply cut it, it's now being held on this clipboard until I paste it elsewhere. Okay? So now what I can do is click in another cell and use the paste keyboard shortcut, which is Control-V. And that is going to move that number from one cell to another. But what about if I want to make a copy as opposed to cutting it? Well, the keyboard shortcut for copy is Control-C. Again, I have my marching ants. I can select another cell and I can do paste Control-V. And now I have a copy. Notice that the original is still showing with marching ants around the outside. So I need to press the Escape key to deselect that cell. Now, to demonstrate some more super useful keyboard shortcuts, we're actually going to open a file that contains more data. And there is a keyboard shortcut for Open. If we press Control-O, it's going to jump us into that backstage area and straight to the Open page. And the file that I want to open, I've accessed recently, so I'm going to go to my recent list of workbooks, and it's this one here. So I can just click once to open that file. So now we have quite a bit of data in here. We can demonstrate some other useful keyboard shortcuts. Now, if I'm clicked in cell A1, where we have the word date, and I want to jump down to the last row in this data set, I can press Control down arrow, and that's going to jump me to the last row. If I want to jump back up to the top, Control up arrow. If I want to jump to the last column in my data set, Control right arrow and Control left arrow to go back. What about instead of just moving around, I want to actually make a selection. I want to select all of the data in column A. Well, for that, we can just add in the Shift key. So Control Shift down arrow will select all of the data in that column. If I do Control Shift right arrow, it's going to select everything. Now another way that we can select all of the data in this little table here is to press the Control A keyboard shortcut. Control A is select all, and this functions slightly differently depending on where you're clicked. So if you're clicked within some data and you press Control A, it's going to basically select all of the data that surrounds where you're clicked. So it's super useful for making very quick selections of tables and data sets. But if I was clicked somewhere over here, just in a blank cell on this worksheet, and I press Control A, that's going to select every single cell in my workbook. Now a keyboard shortcut that we've already been introduced to is Control F1. That is going to minimize up the ribbon. Control F1 again to bring it back. What about if I want to print this spreadsheet? Now again, we haven't really covered printing yet, but this is a very popular keyboard shortcut. Control P is going to jump us across to that backstage area and into the print page where we can then select our printing options. Remember, to come out of this backstage area, we can press the escape key. So those are some of the ones that I use all the time. Now, if you're somebody who finds it maybe difficult to work with a mouse, I know some people who have wrist injuries really struggle working with a mouse and very much prefer to do the majority of their work using the keyboard. Now, if you're one of those people and you want to navigate entirely around Excel using just the keyboard and really cutting down on the amount of times that you're using the mouse, this next shortcut is going to be super useful to you. If you press the Alt key on your keyboard, notice what happens to my ribbons. I get a special shortcut key assigned to all of the tabs, the search area, the items on my quick access toolbar, so on and so forth. So maybe I decide that I want to insert a shape into this worksheet. And I know that shapes are on the Insert ribbon. Instead of clicking on Insert with my mouse, I could use the assigned letter. So I can see that that is N. If I press N, it's going to jump me to that Insert ribbon, and I get a whole new set of keyboard shortcuts. So I want to go to Shapes. I can see the key combination there is SH. So I'm going to press SH, and it's going to drop down that Shapes menu. What I can then do is use my arrow keys to move down and select the shape that I want to use. So it could be any of these. I'm going to go with a rectangle. And all I need to do to select this is press the Enter key on my keyboard, and it's going to insert my shape. If I want to nudge this or move this off of my data set, instead of using my mouse to drag it, I could use my arrow keys, which is going to move this shape along. So you can pretty much navigate and execute actions entirely using your keyboard. So don't forget about that Alt option. And if you find yourself in here and you want to come out of this setting, just press Alt again to get rid of those letters. And finally, if you're really interested in keyboard shortcuts and you'd like to know the full comprehensive list of all of them available in Excel, and as I said, there are hundreds, then your best bet is to go to the help file. And this in itself has a keyboard shortcut. So if we press the F1 key, this is going to pop open Excel Help. And again, we do have an entire lesson on how to access help, but just to show you, if we just type in keyboard shortcuts and hit enter, it's going to search the help files. The top option here will show us all of the keyboard shortcuts available in Excel. So if I click this, it's going to open up this little pane, and if I scroll down, the keyboard shortcuts are divided down into different topics. So if I go to frequently used shortcuts, I'm going to see what all of those are. So some of these we've already used: close a workbook, Control W, open, Control O, save, Control S, cut, copy, paste, undo, that one that you're going to be using all the time. So this is a great little reference guide if you are super keen on using shortcuts as opposed to using your mouse to click on commands.